Now we're cooking. Okay, we are live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you're on Facebook or watching on YouTube, or if you want to watch on Zoom, I don't know if you have the link for that, but anyway, I am so happy to welcome Diane Garrod today. We had an amazing conversation that you're going to have an opportunity to watch on Friday this week. We talked about stress detox for our dogs, and Diane has an amazing system that she has worked out through research, and it's science-based system for helping our dogs detox from stress. So highly recommend that you listen to that interview, and you'll be able to find out lots about it. But meanwhile, Diane, welcome. I'm so glad you're here because I want to chat with you today about helping our sensitive dogs uh, cope with their stress and recover from their stress. And you call it a stress detox, which is I think very appropriate because stress can be really toxic. It can really affect the health of our dogs. We know it affects the health of people, and it can certainly affect the health of our dogs. So what can we do as parents who love our dogs? What can we do to manage their stress, to help them cope with their stress so that it doesn't become toxic and unhealthy for them? And I'm going to spotlight you because I I want people to really pay attention. I think this is super important. Let's see. Yeah, I said I'm going to spotlight you. Okay, let's see. Okay. Um, okay. All right. Now, what happened is I put it in speaker view, so that's not good. I don't want to do that. All right, go ahead. I'll fiddle with this. You go ahead and talk about stress. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Marilyn, for having me, first of all. And I want to start out with a quote from scientist Clive Wynne. Many know him. He says, "When dogs become useful, that's when we develop an affection for them." So what we see is a lot of times in stressful dogs is that their needs aren't being met, or the relationship has broken down. And the dog is not useful to the person. In fact,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, very frustrating. Um, the person becomes frustrated with the dog. They don't really know how to cope and deal with it. They don't have the experience that we have. And we have to always understand that they are not trainers most of the time, the people that we're dealing with and coaching. And so we have to present them with ideas. And my stress release program is that, an idea on how to detoxify the stress. And stress is toxic. Chronic stress means the dog can't come down from what they're experiencing. Their day-to-day is just survival. They're not thriving. And then acute stress makes those big jumps over threshold for whatever reason, whether they are placed in situations by their caregivers, their pet parent, their pet guardian, whatever you want to call them, that they can't handle, or they have a genetic compensity that they need to have things they're not getting. And so, yeah, dealing with that, they can't come down from that acute stress for days and maybe even weeks. And so that's toxic environment.
I was just gonna say, can we go into that genetic piece for a minute? Because there's so many people who think that they dismiss the whole idea of genetics influencing a dog's behavior, and they say any dog can be an ideal dog if they're raised right. It's
Well,
all up to the people to raise the dog the right way.
okay.
And they just dismiss the whole idea of genetics. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Can we kind of dive into that a little bit?
We can, because I have some limited experience with that. My chancellor on the front of my book, he was raised properly with force-free methods, fear-free, and his genetic makeup, and not only that, health history, which can be in genetics, made it hard for him to progress and to welcome the world the way that I would expect a dog to welcome it. And I wouldn't know that until 4.5 years into his life, but I was dealing with a lot of things with him that most people would have rehomed him or even euthanized him earlier on. Even as a puppy, I was seeing these things happening. And later found out that the genetics were such that health issues rose up, and that explained a lot, because he saw the world differently than a normal dog would see it. Distorted, maybe you want to call it. He knew that he felt differently. And so raising him, socializing him properly, it doesn't always reap the hopes in the dog that we want to have. So I think that's a fallacy, that just if we just nurture them, that they become the dog that we want. I think you have to really pay attention to the individual and speed up your learning on dogs, period, and the breed that you choose, or the mixed breeds that are within a dog or a rescue, and pay attention to how the dog is interacting with you. It doesn't mean they're hopeless. What it means is that maybe you've met your match in that sense of the word. Or they are stressed by something else. And when I see a dog such as Chancellor, now I realize that he was stressed, that was nothing to do with me, or it was to do with how he saw the world and what he felt inside. And that health issues can cause stress in and of themselves. And as you know, he had seizures. And I always thought there was something neurologically complicated with him. And people rolled their eyes, of course, didn't believe me. But at 4.5 years, he started having grand mal seizures that he would have for the rest of his life. And so to get to that point, there must have been something going on, or maybe he had some small mini seizures. I mean, we have to look at the whole picture when we're describing, dogs and individuals and genetics, and how we're dealing with these babies under our care. And I'm raising a German Shepherd puppy right now. And, he's different than Valor was, than Sky was, than my Cody was, than Chancellor was, and on and on. They're all individuals. They're all different, just like our children are different personalities. Not all of them are the same. And so based on that particular observation, the book was written, because Chancellor really was the missing link, if you will, to understanding that you don't just have to do everything right and you're going to have the perfect dog. What you have to do is you have to watch what you're doing, listen to the individual, make sure that the environment is one that they can work in and thrive in. And, if they're a working breed, then you need to take that into consideration, because they'll have a higher activity level. So it all fits together. But relationships can break down with people getting puppies, raising dogs, because they might get a dog that they just don't understand how to work with them. And relationships are very important. The relationship I have with my German Shepherd puppy that I'm raising is much different than I have with Valor, my Belgian Tervuren, or my Belgian Tervuren Cody, or my Belgian Chancellor. And then little Sky is genetically different as well, being an Australian mini Shepherd. So when you compile all of that, you just have to realize to take a step back. Who is this individual that's in front of you? And are they stressed? And if they are, you're going to see some signals to that. Do they get aroused very quickly? Are they lunging, barking, even lunging and barking at you? And maybe you feel that you've not done anything to warrant that behavior, but maybe they're hardwired to do that. And some sports like to see dogs as puppies do some grabbing and biting and holding on, and that might be the dog that you want for a certain sport. But generally, with pet parents, you're looking at a companion dog, and that gets very, very complicated if they're seeing stress signals that they don't understand, because then they'll say, my dog is aggressive. And hopefully they'll seek out a professional to help them with that, or they'll get mad and frustrated and they'll start yelling at the dog, or, I mean, I've seen it all. So, there are so many different things, and that's not a relationship that you want to have with your dog, because that's one way to make them aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree yeah, I just had to step away for a minute.
Mhm.
Everything is good now, but yeah, that it's so easy for people to get frustrated. And I think what it comes down to a lot of times is expectations that are not realistic.
Mhm.
Based on just understanding who dogs are and what they need and what their natural behaviors are. And if they get frustrated um, because they're trying to tell us something and we're not getting it, and
Mhm.
they get frustrated, just like you would get frustrated if, you were trying to explain something to somebody and they were just not listening.
Mhm.
Not that they couldn't understand, but they just weren't paying
Yeah,
attention.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes that's the way our dogs feel about us.
Yeah, they
Like,
do.
you're not listening to me.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly.
and so then their behavior might get like a little loud, a little rambunctious, a little pushy or forceful. And sometimes it can look like aggression,
Yeah.
but and it could go there if the dog
Mhm.
gets extremely frustrated. I
Mhm.
imagine it could go there, but we really need to understand, I think, that a lot of that starts with us.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you go back to the quote with Clive Wynne again, that when dogs become useful, we develop an affection for them. So if they're not useful, there's no affection there, and we're talking about love. So, really there's a lot of elements to that love factor between the dog. Do dogs love? With yeah, Panksepp, he said an emotion is care.
Hmm.
So is care indicative of love? How
Hmm.
do dogs love differently than we do? Do they love that you feed them? They were meeting their needs. If we meet their needs, we can say that they're comfortable and they're safe, and hopefully they're happy. But do they love us? And our love depends on other things, doesn't it?
Hmm.
How can you love a dog that you're not having a relationship with? I have a recent client that um, had a puppy. They brought a puppy home, and the husband went away for several days, and that puppy was in the care of the other person, and that's when the relationship eroded and couldn't get it back. And so
Ah.
this dog still doesn't have a relationship with the person. So you're dealing with a lot of things. genetically healthy, health-wise, I mean, and how you're dealing with that dog. My German Shepherd puppy is pretty intense, and I better be meeting that intensity. I better be providing that exercise that he needs, and the relaxation that he needs. I've heard some things, you know, as you're going through Facebook and various areas, that kind of a passive aggressive comment that people are sick of hearing that dogs need to relax.
Really?
But nothing, yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. And then they're showing their dogs running and racing. Well, my dogs run and race too, and they get lots of, you know, exercise and stimulation, but they do need to relax. And the reason is because they have to reach that deep REM, rapid eye movement sleep, in order to refresh and enjoy more activity and more exercise. It's a good energy, not an over-the-top energy that causes irritability in dogs. I don't want an irritable German Shepherd.
No.
No, that is a good thing to have. And anybody who has Belgians knows that they're wired a little bit differently. And so you want to make sure that they are also getting adequate rest in between all of that activity and wonderful running, hiking experiences that they're going to have with you. Because the reality of the stress release program itself, the protocol, and why it took so many years to develop, is it is the right combination of things in order to do, and it encompasses a dog's ideal day, really.
Yeah.
We should be getting all of this stuff. Yeah, not just relaxation, not just exercise, exercise, exercise for miles and miles, unending, or ball play. My little Sky was way over the top in ball play because his previous owner thought that she had to exercise him constantly. And so it was ball play for her. She was an older woman and she just threw the ball constantly. So he became OCD with the ball.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's not
Mhm.
that's not exercise. I mean, it's
Sprinting.
physical, but it's boring.
It's sprinting, and the type, that's a good point, Marilyn, because the type of exercise we're giving our dogs is also important. What muscles are we working? What bones are we working, or not working? And sprinting is only working one part of the body, and it can cause, you know, you could twist a leg. You turn the body stops and turns and in various ways, but you're not conditioning the dog to move that way.
Yeah,
So there
yeah,
has to be some physical, you know, physical therapy, if you want to call it that, that you're preparing your dog for whatever you're going to do with them as well.
right. Yeah, and I have heard canine physical fitness professionals talk about the risks of that repetition, fetching a ball, you know, chasing it and then jamming to a stop, and then doing a quick turnaround and coming back. I mean, all of that it could be really stressful on joints, depending
Yes,
on the age of the dog, a very young dog and even a very old dog.
yes, yes.
It could be, yeah, and you know, if a dog really loves that kind of chase game, they're going to do those things, even though it may hurt them, because they're going to be.
Exactly, and they'll try to avoid the pain because the endorphins will kick in because they love it so much. They're obsessed with that play, and so they want to do it all the time, and that's not a really good thing. It's like football players; they sprint and they go back and forth in the gym and they sprint. But if they did only that all the time, it wouldn't be working the muscles that they need for what they're doing on the football field. So we need to work our dogs in different ways is basically what I'm saying, you know, that hike. But I love canine fitness and I love the movement puzzles. I love the ACE free work. All of that works the bones and the movement that you want in a dog. My German Shepherd is going through growing pains, for instance. So that's called pano. And he was kind of limping on his right foot. So I stopped what we were doing. We did a little bit more rest and we did physical therapy. I worked his muscles and we massaged and we did different types of exercises like canine fitness. And now he's not limping. He's all back into formation, but that doesn't mean that he won't, because he's growing so quickly. So we have to,
This is cute little.
this is my Valor. Yeah. My
Oh,
true heart, I call him. He's
yeah.
my true heart. Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying is pay attention to how your dog is moving, because that can also affect if they're stressed or not. And you're seeing a lot of signaling going on that you should know, so that you know that this dog is stressed. Lip licking, turning away, freezing, mouth tightly closed, walking away from something, not listening to you, not taking treats. And that's a common one. My dog doesn't take treats or doesn't like, well, do they eat? Yeah, they do. And so the reason they're not taking treats or they're taking it hard is because they're stressed. Their body shuts down their digestive system so that they can prepare their muscles and their bones to be ready for war, basically. If they feel that they have to protect themselves, fight, flight, fool around and freeze are all part of that elevated stress signaling. And you better be watching for it because it goes quite quickly into lunge, bark, bite, right?
Yes.
So you haven't paid attention to the dog who walks away and starts sniffing, and you don't know why they're sniffing there. There's nothing. It's called displacement sniffing. It just is calming them. They're trying to calm themselves, or they'll walk away. Doesn't mean when they come back, they're not going to nail you, but it does mean they're walking away to think about what they're going to do next, or what they should do next, or they turn their head, or they move like this away from you. Those are all signs that you should pay attention to, because those are signs of stress in the dog, and the dog is not comfortable with whatever it is that you're doing or what is in the environment at that moment.
Yeah. And they're so easy to miss, aren't they? If you don't know what you're looking for, if
Yes.
it's not, if you haven't trained your eye to spot those things. I know we some of my students the other day got together and reviewed a video, and the person who took the video of their own dog had one initial impression, but when my more advanced students started looking at it, they had a completely different, because they were picking up all the little details that are so easy to miss unless you have a trained eye.
Exactly.
The dog did a shake off, a lip lick, started turning away, and all kinds of things that we don't recognize as the dog telling us something.
Exactly.
Dog, he's
Because
saying,
we're so wrapped up in what we want the dog to do.
Right.
We think the dog should be doing. They're not a thing. They're a sentient being. Same with people, if someone crosses their arms, and leans back, that's a little bit different behavior. I'm going to think, now what am I saying that's causing him to be defensive, or pull back from me rather than move in toward me and be more welcoming, right? That's a whole different. So then we get into distance decreasing signals and distance increasing signals, where the dog doesn't want to have contact or the dog does want to have contact. And so part of the stress release process is I read a lot of body language all day long, every day, every week. And it's still complicated because it does take a trained eye, but you have the basic things that you should know. And then you get more advanced as you go along, and you see things. If my Aussie starts licking his lips 3 or 4 times, he's going for you. And so I have learned that, and that typically would be calming signal, that you would have more signals after that. But he was reprimanded before me for having those signals after those licks, meaning a growl or so he just zips through all of that and goes right to the business, right?
Yeah.
The business of things. So I've learned that, and now he has a full range of stress signals that you can pick up on. But no, it's a language that you need to learn. And it's like speaking French. You might know a little bit of it to get by in the country, but you don't know all of the French language, and the same with the dog language. Speaking dogs, listening to the dog's voice is very important.
So I have a lot of dog's voice going on now. That's why I muted.
Mhm.
I think, oh, there's a UPS truck.
Oh,
That's and
of
so,
course.
yeah. And Radar always lets me know that the UPS deliveries are here because, sometimes they bring goodies for him.
Yeah,
So
of course. Bark box on the way.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's so that they'll be quiet in a minute. They just chime in, like one starts speaking and everybody has to jump in. They, they don't take turns speaking. They all talk at once. So
That's funny.
yeah, yeah. But these are such important points about really listening. So, everybody started to erupt in barking then. They had a reason. They had a
Mhm.
reason for the barking.
Yeah,
And my one dog is he grew up during COVID. And so he wasn't used to people, strangers,
right.
meeting them. And
Mhm.
that was a window that opened and closed. And now I have to help him through that.
Yeah.
And he's getting better with it, but he needs support. He doesn't need to be scolded or
Mhm.
punished or reprimanded,
Yeah,
doing something that
yeah.
so anyway.
Yeah, no, COVID was a hard time for everybody. And there's certain behaviors that came out that because we didn't work on the socialization skills that are needed in our dogs, because we didn't have that social network. Nobody was meeting. You were afraid to even touch a dog because you might contact COVID from the dog's fur. And so you didn't allow people near your dogs. You didn't allow dogs near your dogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very sheltered. So I think we're still seeing some of the effects of that with a lot of the dogs. If we're seeing an increase in behavior that is not acceptable, that might be one reason. But we need to get over that. And what I like to do when I'm working behavior modification is actually I'm re-socializing. I need to say that, yes, we missed that period, but doesn't mean that the dog can't socialize and restructure their thinking throughout their lifetime. Ian Dunbar, I think, is quoted as saying they'll be catching up for the rest of their lives. If they miss that period, but doesn't mean that they can't catch up, because I've had too many successes where we have restructured the dog's behavior so that they could be a canine good citizen.
Yeah, and we have to understand that, don't we? So that we can be more supportive of them and not, as we said earlier, not have unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
It would be great if my dog could see, a visitor come into the house and just kind of wag his tail and walk off and go lie down in the corner
Mhm.
and take a nap. That would be great. But that's not what's going to happen. And for me to expect that and then get frustrated because it doesn't happen,
Mhm.
it'd be very unfair to the dog.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so we need to have realistic expectations about what the dog is able to do. And as you pointed out, it doesn't mean that we're stuck in that for the rest of the dog's life. We can make changes because the the brain is very flexible.
Mhm.
And we can grow and we can change and we can change our opinions. And so can the dogs, but we have to lead them gently to that.
Yes. And
So,
what we're doing is really creating new neural pathways when we were showing them what else to do. The pathways that we can't see, of course, because we're looking at the outward behavior. But that's what's
Mhm.
happening. We're preventing them from going down this wide path that they've been going down, whether it was fear or reactivity or aggression. And we're creating different things for them to do, that they have different pathways to go down to make
Mhm.
good decisions. That pathway will still always be there because it goes to the amygdala, and fear is something that they have to protect themselves. And,
Mhm.
you know, and if survival is what crops up again, then they'll default to that same behavior that they had before. But we are creating new neural pathways so they can make other decisions. And that's so important. The dog's brain is exactly like ours, except the frontal cortex is smaller. So think of that for a minute. These are sentient beings, these are thinking beings, these are feeling beings. They might not show their feelings in the ways that humans do, but we project that on them anyway, don't we? We project what we want them to do versus who they are as an individual.
Mhm.
So as you were saying, this boy, he likes visitors. Okay. And so does my German Shepherd puppy. Absolutely loves anybody. And he would be that one that would go lie down after meeting. But Sky, absolutely not. And you're not going to want to meet him right away, right? Because he's a little snarkier. And so we have different personalities going on in my home that I have to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
And I can't expect everybody to just fall into how I want them to be.
Right.
Otherwise,
Exactly.
we're in trouble. And that's when you start bashing your head against the wall, because that dog is never going to be the individual that you want them to be.
Yeah. We have to meet
Close.
the dog where he is, accept the dog in front of us, and work with that dog, not
Yes,
some imaginary dog that we wish we had.
exactly. And that can take a bit of time.
Mhm.
And it's well worth it, because you're going for lasting behavior, not flash in the pan fix-its, you
Mhm.
know, that don't half the time stick or work anyway.
Yeah. And
Unless it's out of fear. And I don't want to have that relationship with any of my dogs. My German Shepherd puppy, someone would tell me, well, you have to have a heavy hand with a German Shepherd. Well, no. You know, he doesn't even wear a collar, and he's almost 7 months old, and he listens. And the same with my Belgians. And anybody will tell you, Malinois, I don't care what kind of dog you have. If you've got kind hands and you know some structure, and anybody who knows me is I do things in a systematic way all the time. So that I get the results that I want. I'm not just picking up things and telling you to do things that I haven't done myself, because that wouldn't be fair. I'm not, you know, picking things up. But you don't have to have a heavy hand, but you have to be a smart, and you have to know a few things, the science, and you have to be patient. I think
yeah,
patience a lot of people don't have.
well, that's true. I
Mm-hmm,
think that's true.
mm-hmm,
Uh, and it's about communicating mentally and emotionally, not because when you're using your hands the way you're talking about, like heavy-handed,
mm-hmm.
that's force. And whenever you use
Yeah,
force, you're going to get resistance.
anybody
It's
can do
just,
it. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, and
anybody can do that, right?
yeah, it's I mean, I can wield a hammer and hammer a nail, but that's, you know, I want a dog who looks to me, respects me, listens to me, knows that I'm listening to them, and I will get the skills that I want.
Mhm.
And I don't need to have, yeah, I don't even need to maybe teach sit right away, because the first thing I teach is touch. Why?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can move them non-confrontationally anywhere that I want them to go, and touch becomes so valuable in many different ways and structure. And then you can teach sit or whatever and down, and you know, you don't have to press
All
on
that stuff.
back end to do all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The relationship has to come first. Because
Yeah.
anybody can get a dog to go through certain mechanical activities.
Yeah, robotic.
That's not rocket science.
Yeah, and in our robotic community, you know, in our robotic world,
Yeah.
I think it's getting a little worse that people really want quick things and robotic presence of the dog, that they do what they say when they say it. Then you sacrifice a lot of things.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I'm just going to jump over and make sure that we don't have a question in the Facebook group. Okay, nope, looks like we're good there. Okay. So Diane, thank you so much. And thank you for your patience. Well, I had all these interruptions and right now, they don't come over here. Come on. Here we go. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I asked him to do, like when he's barking at something,
Yeah,
to just come back and let me know about it. Come to me and tell me about it.
exactly.
He doesn't have to be quiet or stop barking. He's not doing anything bad.
Mhm.
But I want him, if he notices something to bark about,
Mhm.
just come and tell me. Come over and
Right,
tell me about it, and I'll listen.
exactly.
And usually when he comes to tell me about it, he's quiet
Yeah, and
because he's not
you,
listening anymore. Yeah.
well, that's because you acknowledged his communication.
Yeah.
And my puppy did that this morning, barked. He's not a barker, but he barked, he woofed at something outside. And so all I did was I walked, I put my hand on his shoulder, and we looked, there's nothing there. And it was one bark, and he was done with it now because I had listened to him and acknowledged his communication. I didn't yell, shut up, be quiet, shush. You know, this is what we do as humans. We err in that language that we portray to
Yeah.
our animals. Yeah. And we should be very cognizant of not doing that.
Right. We have to be aware and attuned because acknowledgement can be a little counterintuitive
Mm-hmm.
because we're so conditioned that we have to make the dogs obey.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just acknowledge, that's all the dog, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, our brains and the dog's brains have so much in common. And don't we want acknowledgement when
Mm-hmm.
we're saying something?
Exactly.
Don't we want
Exactly.
to be heard? And it's very, dehumanizing if
Yeah.
somebody just dismisses us and says, you're not important. What you have to say isn't important. And so we can do the same thing with our dogs. We do what you said a minute ago, like, shh,
Mhm.
quiet, hush,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you
And
made a good point that the one word that you said that really stuck with me is making them
yeah,
obey. We don't
Mhm.
have to make them obey, but we want mannerly dogs, and we can have that with force-free, fear-free teachings. I call it teaching instead of training,
Yeah, me
because
too.
I'm teaching that dog constantly whenever I'm with them,
Uh-huh.
and they're going to respond to that. And I am going to look like I am getting them to do whatever I want them to do when I want them to do it. But I am not commanding it. I am not making them do it. My training is a lot different because I build on where we were the last time, or I see opportunities for building things in working with them every day.
Mhm.
My senior dogs are still learning.
Mhm.
We never stop learning. We keep going. The puppy, if he does something, I might capture that
Mhm.
instead of making him or
Right.
commanding him. Then he wants to do more for me, not run away from me.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
we can have wonderfully mannerly dogs,
Yes.
force
Yeah.
free. Mhm.
And before like hundreds of years ago, and thousands of years ago, people were living with dogs and there wasn't, obedience training or anything
Mhm.
like that. But
Mhm.
dogs were working side by side
Mhm.
with humans for eons.
Mhm. That's for
So,
sure.
so the potential for that
Mhm.
relationship is there, and we don't have to force it. It can
Right.
just become a natural thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Diane, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
It was. Thank you.
Yeah, and as
Mhm.
I said earlier, thank you for your patience in putting up with all my distractions.
I can talk
It's
through
just like
that.
it, you know, it,
Sorry.
things can be quiet for hours, and then the minute you have to get on a call or a live stream or something, all of a sudden a million things start happening all at once. So thank
That's
you very much. Thank you for
fine.
your patience. I appreciate it. And
Thank
thank you for
you.
joining me for this. And
Valor says thank you.
oh, you're so sweet. Um, so if you're listening to this and you kind of got inspired by listening to Diane and all of the, really important, impactful things she was saying about dogs, then you want to make sure that you don't miss her interview coming up. And if you haven't registered yet, what are you waiting for? Go in there and register because it's free. There is a paid upgrade, but it's optional. And you can certainly watch all of the interviews for free. So go
Mhm.
ahead, register. You'll be very glad you did. It's an amazing panel of speakers. I absolutely came away from every interview just feeling so inspired and so motivated. So wonderful conversations coming up, guys. So make sure you check it out. Diane, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn, for having
I'm
me.
going to end. I need to end the Zoom in order to end the live stream. So we'll say bye-bye for now. And thank you again till the next time we talk.
Yes.